Hi guys. This morning I was on the Zoom call with Miss Zachariah's class, and Marley pointed out that for some of y'all, the video from chapter one of The Eagle and the Raven was on Seesaw for too short of a time, and some people didn't get to hear it. So I am going to read chapter one again, so that if you guys do want to kind of follow the story in chronological order and you missed chapter one, you can go ahead and listen to that now. So, a little introduction. This book is called The Eagle and the Raven. It's by James A. Michener, and it tells the story of Santa Anna and Sam Houston and their relationship. It kind of tells about their backgrounds as well. The eagle, of course, is Santa Anna, and the raven is Sam Houston. So I chose it because I think it kind of aligns well with what we're learning right now in social studies and, Texas history. And you'll see that as I'm reading, I'll refer to battles that we've learned about in class. So that's pretty cool. And I like it a lot. I think you guys will like it too. So I will go ahead and start by reading chapter one. It's called Fledgling Raven. It was as if two powerful birds had entered the sky within a single year. The eagle in the south, the raven in the north, each circling and gaining strength, each processing in the consolidation of its own powers. For 42 tempestuous years, the adversaries would fly in ever-widening orbits until confrontation became inevitable. They would meet only once, a clash of 18 culminating minutes in the spring of 1836, which would change the history of the world. This account of those 42 years of preparation kaleidoscopes their wild flight throughout the histories of the United States and Texas. The Raven, so called by his closest friends and many of his enemies, was born first on the 2nd of March, 1793, to a Scots-Irish family which had settled in Rockbridge County of Western Virginia. Sam Houston was one of 9 children, a difficult lad who would accept only a few terms of schooling, but who did acquire an intense love of reading books of high quality. Even before the age of 10, he showed that he was going to grow up to be a large man and a stubborn one, never afraid to act on his own or to explore the remote reaches of the Blue Ridge Valley beyond Lexington, the county seat. In 1807, when Sam was 14, his father died while planning a removal from Virginia to the more inviting land of Tennessee. After the burial, Sam's resolute mother loaded her many children into 2 wagons and started down the valley roads that would carry them to their new home. For much of the way, Sam managed the new 5-horses wagon, guiding it past Roanoke and Bristol and into the mountainous country of eastern Tennessee. There, the Houstons started the long, rough ride over barely sustained roads to Knoxville, the capital of the new state, but they did not linger among its log houses. Widow Houston preferred rural life and kept her family heading south to the insignificant town of Maryville, a chain of rude log huts strung out along both sides of a rutted road. Here at the edge of a wilderness, which would rapidly become a rich agricultural area, the Houstons could have halted and shared in the prosperity that would soon mark the county seat. Instead, they forged on 10 miles farther into the roadless forest where, on the banks of the 2 streams, they settled on some 400 promising acres. Cutting out fields for crops and a space for their new house was laborious work, and even though the Houstons managed to buy slaves to do the heavier tasks, the 6 boys had to labor strenuously. During this early period, Sam displayed 3 characteristics that would mark his life. 1, he did not like tasks he considered routine. 2, he was strongly inclined toward a military life. And 3, he had a most peculiar and pronounced affinity for the Indians who were being driven from their ancestral lands. His aversion to work was easily indulged. He turned jobs over to his 5 brothers. He also became adept in woodsmanship, with a curious affection for whittling, a skill he would practice for the rest of his life. His delight in military matters was demonstrated in the skills he developed with rifle and sword, and by the age of 16, he was an accomplished frontiersman thirsting for adventure. From his father, he acquired several habits that remained with him. The senior Houston had been an ardent militiaman in the American Revolution, and Sam inherited this love of battle. His father also had the habit of moving away from where he was living whenever life there became too complicated or boring. Sam, too, became a fighting, wandering man. Laziness and a desire to fight were understood in Tennessee, especially if the growing lad was the size of a young ox with power to match, but his preference for life with Indians could be neither explained nor condoned. One day, to the astonishment of all, Sam simply left home and traveled alone on foot across the streams and mountains of Tennessee to make his home with the Cherokees. This Indian nation was among the noblest of America's native tribes, but had been forced to move under increasing pressure from the white men to locations west of the Tennessee River. He lived with them for a year, learning their language and their ways, then returned to Maryville without telling anyone where he had been or what he had been doing. After another brief and restless try at Tennessee society, at age 17 he was charged with riotous behavior, disturbing the peace, and preventing the local sheriff from performing his duties. He was fined $5 at Blount County Court and warned against further offenses threatening the state. He appears to have been in uniform at the time of this tempestuous behavior, a member of the militia, and it is clear from what his colleagues said of him that he was already regarded as a potential leader of men. He might have started his military career at that point, but, disgusted with civilization after his brush with the law, he instead returned to his Indian friends. This time he spent nearly 2 years with them, perfecting his knowledge of a way of life which he admired and with which he was content, and receiving from them the honored name of the Raven. He carried with him a copy of Pope's translation of the Iliad, and in later years, when he had attained a measure of grandeur, often reflected that what he prized most of all were those early times when he read Homer in the wilderness and wandered the mountain streams with the young Indian women who became his intimate companions. Here in the wilds of western Tennessee, he acquired the Indian's love of rhetoric, his appreciation of nature, his sense of high honor, and his willingness to fight in defense of his prerogatives. He also accumulated a $100 debt from buying liberal gifts for his Indian friends, male and female. Sam Houston's life constitutes a grand mystery, indeed a chain of almost insoluble mysteries, which cannot be solved or even investigated, without remembering that here was a tough-minded Scots-Irishman, steeped in Homer, who chose at 3 important intervals in his life to cast his lot with the Indians. He was thus one of the quintessential Americans, for he combined in a massive body and an able brain two of the major strains of our national history, the rigorous frontiersman and the natural Indian. We leave Houston in the year 1812 at the age of 19, a reckless wanderer among the tribes, a failed scholar, an insubordinate militiaman, and a youth apparently unfitted for civilian life. He was about 6'4", some said 6'6", weight just under 200 pounds, a crack shot, a good horseman, a reciter of poetry, and like his mother, a believer in the Bible. His neighbors considered him the least of the Houston sons. He irritated them when he appeared in Maryville dressed in Indian garb. Moccasins, long hair adorned with a feather, deerskin pants, and covering all a bright red and blue blanket pulled close about his broad shoulders. If anyone in those years had predicted that a young Sam Houston, a squaw man trading among Indians in Arkansas, would become in succession a congressman in Washington, a governor of Tennessee, the president of a new nation, and then a United States senator, with a chance of becoming president, he would have been jeered.